G'day, my fellow media collectors. I'm Troy, and today we're looking at Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths. Part 2 is an animated superhero film that was produced by Warner Brothers Animation and DC Entertainment, and it was released in digital format on the 23rd of April 2024. This movie is the first installment of a three-part animated adaptation of the classic miniseries Crisis on Infinite Earths, and was created to conclude the Tomorrowverse continuity of the DC animated movie universe and allow for the fresh start of the new James Gunn-led DC animated movie universe. Voice actor Will Friedle reprised the role of Terry McGinnis from the Batman Beyond cartoon from 1999. This Blu-ray has a runtime of 95 minutes. This Blu-ray version was released on the 29th of April 2024. And it was distributed by Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. With the multiverse under siege, the Anti-Monitor's antimatter wave has devastated Earths across realities. The Monitor recruits heroes like Supergirl and enlists a psycho pirate to gather champions from different universes to protect what remains. Under growing pressure, the Justice League and their allies must defend the vibrational towers on threatened Earths from shadow demons, manipulated emotions, and betrayals, making their task nearly impossible. As heroic sacrifice mounts and reality itself begins to unravel, the heroes are forced to confront secrets about the Monitor, the origins of Supergirl, and the true scope of the threat. By the end, victory remains uncertain, and the stage is set for an even more dangerous confrontation ahead in part 3 of this trilogy. Now, the script for this film falls victim to its place amongst the trilogy, and that being right in the middle chapter. And lots of the script's energy goes into more setting up the events for part 3, and while that's understandable, I feel it doesn't stand well on its own as a coherent and engaging chapter without that making it all about the setup with no real payoffs in this movie as such. It also feels like this movie lacks some real clarity and cohesion, and that is due to the script's frequently switching between multiple Earths, timelines, and character arcs, making it feel like the movie is can be a bit disjointed by the lack of signposting, weak connective tissue between scenes, and I guess the confusion about where and when certain events are happening in this movie. The movie tries to replicate the success of the last film by focusing on a central character to ground the story, but this time it feels it's a bit split between Psycho Pirate's journey and Supergirl and Monitor's relationship that doesn't manage to capture the same emotional connection that the previous movie had. And because we follow two emotional character arcs, they feel, I guess, diluted and not enough real space to resonate with the audience. Which, look, it undercuts their impact that could have made the difference between this being a great movie and a not so great movie. I mean, overall, this feels like less of a movie and more like a lengthy interlude and more of an obligatory middle part that exists to bridge part 1 and part 3 rather than its own strong chapter in its own right. And look, for that, the best I can do for this is 10 out of 30. So this movie is based on the DC Comics storyline Crisis on Infinite Earths from 1985 through to 1986 by Marv Wolfman and George Perez, and it was turned into a film trilogy with the purpose of concluding the DC animated Tomorrowverse movies, which began back in 2013. Now, while the film draws a lot from those original Crisis on Infinite Earth comic books, there is a but. And the filmmakers have noted that certain tragic or emotional events from the comic books had to be cut or modified for the movie to do the massive scope of the original comics. And look, it had hundreds of DC heroes and villains across countless Earths to cover. Now, as before, they changed those multiple things to fit the Tomorrowverse narrative, and those include having Psycho Pirate become more of a central figure, being involved in more of the emotional multiversal manipulation. And we also have Supergirl's role in the comics as her, shall we say, mostly famously dying in Superman's arms. But in the movie, she takes on the mantle of the Hardbringer, instead shifting her arc and possible fate. Also, in the comics, the Monitor is seen as a mysterious being who actually dies early on in the comics to further the hero's cause. But in the movie, he has more of an extended presence and personal arc. And that's not to mention some of the other little key deaths and world-ending events that are rearranged or reinterpreted, with not all the iconic sacrifices happening in this part 2 as they kind of did in the timeline of the comic book run.
Now this has put me all out of whack.
Now I'll just grab the cast from up here, and as you can see, the cast list is, it's very, very long, and we get all the regular voice actors back from the Tomorrowverse movies, all in their roles, and hell, even some special guests like Will Friedle as Terry McGinnis from the Batman Beyond's cartoon, which was great to see him. Not that he had much to say, but good to see him nonetheless. Now, for the cast, I really don't have much to say on the cast, as for the amount of voice actors here, you only get really 3 or 4 main actors getting any real screen time across the movie, and the rest all really just become more guests or cameos throughout it, just due to the sheer size of this project. Now, take for instance Meg Donnelly as Supergirl and Jonathan Adams as the Monitor. Their story is meant to provide some of the emotional grounding amid this heavy plot, but whether it's the script or their performance, I feel this relationship falls as flat as Adam's delivery of his lines as the Monitor. But there was only one real standout, and that was Jeffrey Arend as a Psycho Pirate. Look, he delivers a real menace, weirdness, and emotional weight to the role, but look, due to the script and I guess the time constraints, he doesn't really get the opportunity to bring the performance home at, say, I guess the same level as Matt Bomer did as Flash in the first movie. Look, ultimately, the weakness in this area lies kind of less with the talent, I would say, and more with how little space some of them are given to really shine and do their craft. And I guess how often the emotional beats are undercut by the rushed pacing and overstuffed plot, which I guess comes down to the direction maybe. And look, for that, the best I can do for this is probably, I don't know, maybe a 9 out of 20. Okay, let's have a look at the cover, and as you can see, another one of those awesome painted covers. How good does that look? I really love all the covers across all of them. So we'll have a look at the side. There's the side there. And of course, we'll have a look at the back. Not bad, very similar to the last one. I think the aesthetic on all these is all very similar, very similar. Even the sort of design of the covers is very similar as well. Now, if we look inside the disc, yeah, it's just the those grayscale pictures that they put in there. There's no color disc and nothing on the inside. A little disappointing, but overall, I think the look of these and that, I just really enjoy it. I think I like it when they put just that little bit of effort, especially with a cover like that. A really nice painted cover makes the difference. It pops out when you look at it on the shelf, when you go to your local store to buy it, that's for sure. And for that, look, I'm going to give it the same as I did last time for the last one. Yep, you guessed it, an 8 out of 10. Okay, we only get 3 special features on this Blu-ray edition, and they are Voices in Crisis, the Bat Family of the Multiverse, and Part 3, a sneak peek. So look, how am I going to put this? They were just as boring as this film. Now, look, come to think of it, I can't really remember a lot about what they said or what they did in those specials, but overall, they just showed a couple of voice actors talking about how they're going over their performance, a little piece on the Bat Family, which wasn't that much, and a sneak peek, which I didn't actually watch the sneak peek because I didn't really want to spoil anything for the 3rd installment. Not that this movie gave me much to hope for, but I didn't want to ruin anything in case it was good. But anyway, unfortunately, that's all we get, and it is really piss weak, to tell you the truth. So yeah, I'm going to give this a digital score of 2 out of 10. As I bring up the Rotten Tomatoes scorecard, as you can see, the critics came in at, ooh, Jesus, 14%. Yeesh. While the audience score came in at 31%, oh, much better. Now for the critics, there was only 7 reviews, and for the most part, they were all really bad, except one guy who, he kind of sounds like, you know, those shills, the ones that say everything about every movie is awesome because they don't want to piss the studios off because they don't want to lose their free stuff from the company that made the movie. I think he was one of those. But for the audience, we had around the 50 or so mark as far as reviewers, and the majority were really average in saying the same thing, like it was boring and had no focus. Just, I hate to say it, all filler, no killer. So look, as we round that out, the best score we're going to get out of this is, yeah, unfortunately, a 2 out of 10. Well, after that great first movie, I did have some high hopes for this second one, but oh my God, I was let down. I think I knew to a degree that this second movie in this trilogy, well, this would be more about setting up the next movie than anything else, but I didn't think it would be like this boring. You see, while part 1 had plenty of action and a lot of heart to the story, part 2 just falters at every turn and loses any steam created by that first movie, as the stakes aren't as high and the characters are more sort of scattered without really any focus. Like, for example, we had the Flash as the star of the movie and focus of the plot in the first one. Whereas this time we have Supergirl, Psycho Pirate, and the Monitor given major arcs, giving us no clear focal character and emotional journey. All of their journeys just feel a bit underdeveloped or thin because it spreads it out amongst the 3 characters and it just doesn't focus on the one. Now for me, the relationship between Supergirl and the Monitor is supposed to be this central pivotive point to the narrative, but for me it just lacks the emotional weight one would kind of expect from this relationship. The only interesting thing for me was seeing like an old forgotten character like Psycho Pirate have his backstory told in more depth, which is funny because I knew of the character but not too much about him and his history, and I did find his motivations and his backstory actually quite interesting. But look, nothing more than that. I mean, let's face it, this happens with a lot of these DC animated movies because they love to take real great original stories and reshape the characters, the stories, and the pacings to fit whatever animated universe continuity they have going at the time. And look, it's always destined to fail. Well, most of the time. There have been 1 or 2 exceptions. And as this is the middle part of a trilogy, this movie inherits a lot of setup burden that doesn't allow it to really stand on its own. And look, for me, oh God, because of how boring it was, the best I can do for this is maybe a 5 out of 20. Okay, for availability, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5 as, look, it's not that hard to find at any of your retail outlets or on eBay as it's still relatively new. For collectability, I'm going to put this at a 3 out of 5 as I said before, this is really for your DC fans, your Justice League fans, your completists, but I wouldn't worry too much for anyone else. The average price, you are looking at somewhere between the $16 to $42 mark for Blu-ray, so it always pays to shop around. Let's go to the scorecard and see how this one shapes up. Now for the final score, we get a grand total of 36 out of 100. Yikes, that's not a great score at all. But this movie, unfortunately, falls into that middle movie syndrome. And as I said before, this movie is all filler and no killer. Yeah, that's for sure.
But also not great.
So average?
Next week on the show, we are going to see what I picked up for the month of September 2025. So make sure you come back and check that out. Thanks for watching.